you blew the whistle on what was happening at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. You worked there. What you saw is shocking, and I think shocked a lot of people. People wanted to kind of come out and discredit you and throw water on your story. But you, from the very beginning, were calling attention to the incredible weapons, the directed energy weapons that we had at our disposal at the South Pole Station. And now it seems like you've been vindicated, because a lot of people, maybe in the UFO community or otherwise, were slamming you and going after you and all of that. And now the Trump administration came out just recently and admitted that we have weapons that can manipulate space and time. Maybe you can walk us back a little bit here. When you worked at the South Pole Station, what were you doing there, and what did you see? And how big of a weapon are we talking about here? And what are its strengths, and what are governments using it for?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Basically, my role was I provided maintenance to the facility. In that capacity, I had extreme access to everything that was going on. As I disclosed in Washington, D.C. as a whistleblower, these research projects are actually directed energy weapons systems. I've been trying to get people to pay attention to the high level of technology that's being hidden from us. And there's only a fistful of people like yourself that are willing to engage these topics and consider what might be being hidden from us. In regards to the technology that I found down there, the capacity to generate earthquakes is one of the things going on. Earthquake induction is a very referenceable science that has a lot of money being invested into it for the past couple of decades. So the Christchurch earthquakes that occurred in February of 2011, 2 of them are the responsibility of this equipment that I identified at the South Pole Station.
Is the New Zealand government aware that this was caused by the equipment and the machines at the South Pole Station? As the New Zealand government demanded retribution, said, you guys literally destroyed one of our cities. I mean, has there been any, or are they just sort of hands off?
Not to my knowledge. Nobody from the New Zealand government has ever reached out to me. Technically, I have been interviewed by other podcasters and such from New Zealand, Australia, folks that are in the vicinity and question, American tactics, but there does not seem to have been any response from the government.
And I understand it was an accident. When they did the testing of the equipment, it was not meant to happen?
That's what I was initially told, but I question the veracity of that as well, with consideration to an email that was apparently released or leaked from Hillary Clinton that was shortly after the event in Christchurch. And I'm paraphrasing, but she had written something to the point of, like, great that the earthquake occurred and on cue. That was the weird part to me. So it was like...
And on cue.
And on cue.
Maybe walk us through, like, when you arrive there, what does this facility look like? What do these weapons look like? What part of the building are the weapons in? Are they underground? Is there a big control center? Can you walk us through exactly what it looks like? And
Absolutely. The elevated station was a relatively new structure when I arrived. It was going from construction to operations and maintenance. And everything does kind of look somewhat spacey when you're in that environment. Like it's like being on Hoth in Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the backdrop. Things look newfangled and high-end construction because they have to fight the elements so much so. And the elements are ruthless. When you talk about cold and wind and lack of oxygen, you're heartily taxed just doing anything in that environment. But with that being said, upon, initial pass through and stuff and to the general public who simply just goes from compartment to compartment and is limited access, it looks very benign. And yes, the vast majority of the functioning components are embedded in the ice. So there's really nothing to see. The DOMs, 5,160 of them, basketball size type items, they're embedded in the ice in a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer array. So you can't see it.
DOMs.
The DOMs is about a basketball sized device that's embedded for the primary purpose of the detecting of neutrinos. But then the secondary aspect is the ability to also transmit which adds up to very high power levels and in the form of what appears to be a phased array transmitter. Again, plenty of stuff referenceable on this. Basically, the IceCube neutrino detector array is like another level of magnitude of what we know the HARP array systems to be. So the HARP array sits on the surface of the Earth. It has length and width and is a phased array in and of itself. This just adds depth to it. So it just gives it more magnitudes of capacity for whatever they're doing with it. And whatever they are doing with it is going to get worse because they're currently slated to make that facility, the neutrino detector array, 10 times bigger.
Where? There?
Right there. That facility is going to be expanded upon.
Now, when you were there, you were working for a defense contractor.
Yes, sir.
Raytheon?
Raytheon Polar Services was the subsidiary under Raytheon.
Why does a defense contractor need to be at the South Pole Station?
One of my biggest questions is it goes from Raytheon to Lockheed Martin to PA. Like, why is it always people that manufacture and operate weapons systems seem to get these contracts? There's plenty of other contractors out there that provide the necessary services, but don't make weapons. I don't know why they wouldn't get the contract.
Fascinating. So now they're going to expand this size 10 times larger.
That's my understanding.
And they already can carry out earthquakes in New Zealand and other spots. First of all, do we know of any other instances besides Christchurch?
My understanding was that, and I did discuss this on the Patrick Bet-David show, there was a circumstance, well, this is a while ago now, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, that President Biden at the time had made some sort of untoward threat towards Turkey, that if they didn't, acquiesce to whatever his decision was, that he'd hit them with an earthquake. I had seen this clip before, that it is extremely hard to find, but it did occur, and they did get hit with an earthquake.
It's so disturbing. So 10 times larger, 10 times larger than what's currently there. So for those who are uninitiated, and I have to plead ignorance on this up until just a few years ago, up until I met you, started really diving into this research, started studying what was happening with the climate engineering, like our friend Dane Wigington, and what's been happening with chemtrails and all of these other things. I was pretty ignorant on it, and it sounded like too out there.
Oh, I totally get it.
That our government is manipulating our weather. They're manipulating climate. They're manipulating ocean levels. They're manipulating lakes and all of this. It sounded crazy until you realize they've got all these HARP arrays all across the United States. What are they doing? What are these HARP arrays?
And they're around the world. We're not the only ones with them.
Right. Yeah.
So this is where I get into the conversation of weapons of warfare in a modern age that, it's not the conventional pull a trigger and a bullet comes out of the barrel. This is modern weaponry in a new battlefield. And unfortunately, I think we, the people of this planet, are currently all caught in the crossfire. It's not the walking wounded of old in the conventional warfare where, the battlefield is over there and we send our troops over there and it's an attrition of resources. The first one to run out of resources loses in that, logistics chain of the battlefield being over there. I think they've circumnavigated the relocation of the battlefield. I think they no longer bother putting the troops in uniform and sending them over there. And now the same activity, which is effectively, outlasting the resources or infrastructure of your enemy, I think they're just attacking them directly now instead of, indirectly through the battlefield being remotely located. We're just going directly after resources. We're going directly after infrastructure, and we don't see it going on as people in the battlefield contemporarily.
President Trump the other day just said we have these incredible weapons.
Correct.
So is that we're not going to tell you what these weapons are, but if you mess with us, you may end up with a city that's been destroyed.
Correct. And I think these are the types of conversations that, occur publicly, where there's a face to the conversation. At face value, it means this. There's other people paying attention to those conversations. And I think just like the systems at South Pole Station, there's primary, secondary, tertiary. So I believe there's other people that listen to those statements that might have been, pre-told that, pay attention when President Trump says this means that. I think there's a lot of these communications that happen publicly that we, the people, don't realize that there's other aspects to the information being relayed.
Let's talk about UFO disclosure a little bit more. Like in the beginning, we talked about, you were one of the first people really talking about these directed energy weapons, what you saw, but earthquake weapons. But where do you see the disclosure movement going within Congress right now and the Pentagon?
Ooh, I am not content with what's going on currently with disclosure in regards to our government. I do not believe that anything has positively occurred with the information that I transferred to the Senate Intelligence Committee. I'm cognizant that Arrow is completely lying about everything that happened with the June 23 disclosure.
How so?
Here's a perfect example. You are well aware of the information that I had presented publicly even prior to going there. There would be no reason for me to withhold any of that information now getting into the skiff at Arrow. I can only assure you, because no one else was present, I relayed to them that myself and my crew were negatively impacted from our proximity to these directed energy weapons platforms and are suffering Havana syndrome symptoms. I clarified this. This is part of my gripe and why I speak publicly, to get justice for myself and my crew. It's part of it. When Arrow gave their summary report to the public, they stated with great clarity that they are aware of reports of victims of Havana syndrome symptoms from every single continent except for Antarctica. I was thoroughly floored.
Even though your testimony is there.
Even though I went to them to testify to that fact.
Talk about what symptoms you've experienced since then and what your crew has experienced.
I because of the situation, right? Because these people, myself included, are targeted, I like to just simply lay the list on the table without allowing the people that are targeting us to know how accurate their targeting is.
I see.
So I'll just agree that I suffer from the list. The people that I know are suffering symptoms from the list, but I'd rather just leave it at that.
What is Havana syndrome?
Havana syndrome is effectively the wounds of war from modern weaponry known as directed energy weapons. So on the list are things like mental fatigue, issues with mental capacity, voice to skull. The Department of Defense employees were, they like to use the term like hearing peculiar sounds. That's the cover, hearing voices in your head. And
then you're crazy, right?
Right. So nobody wants to say these things because it sounds terrible. But if this technology is being applied to all of us in mass, consider it. At some point, we need to have some very serious conversations about what the capabilities of modern technology are and the implications.
Do you think that they're using it in mass?
Absolutely.
On the American populace or certain cities? Or
on the world. I believe that what we just went through with the COVID debacle is a perfect example of the application of this technology to move the people in a direction. I don't know about you, but during the COVID debacle, I kept hearing from when in the history of the world has there been precedent where the whole world agreed on anything?
Yeah.
But during COVID, we all somehow agreed a mask is cool. Right?
Well, yeah.
Everyone agreed a mask was cool for the most part, right? Reluctantly agreed, but did it anyhow. And I would suggest that if we look at the broad spectrum of all the different components of technology that are around that can be mated together, hypothetically speaking, you put a drone up, it has directed energy weapons capacity to make the connection between that technology and your head during the COVID debacle. And the mission, apply some AI, make a connection, data mine, find out what's Clayton's weakness. What is the thing? We effectively want everybody to say, I will wear a mask because, and then find the weak point to fill in the blank. And then once that can be figured out, now relay that back. So now voice to skull technology would tolerate an ability to mimic your voice, play it back to you, but with the statement, I will wear a mask because, and I can just keep doing that and looking and transmitting And if you don't know thyself or in your own thoughts, I mean, if you're sitting there considering, should I wear a mask? Shouldn't I wear a mask? Every time you find yourself at a fork in the road in life, you have a conversation in your head. What should I do? And multiple Claytons then engage and make a decision. What if I can intrude on that process with an invasive version that's in the communication? How would you know the difference if you didn't know the technology existed? Wouldn't I be able to wield a serious amount of power over you?
I mean, is this like, MK Ultra levels of stuff? I mean,
this is years of research and development in consciousness, technology, and the intermingling of them. This is where we are today.
And you believe that while you were there, they were using it on you, or it was as a byproduct of you being there?
I believe it's a byproduct of proximity, first and foremost. And then I have concerns that if we were an offensive facility where there are people working defensively against us and hitting us with their equipment. These are all fair questions.
Right. It's unbelievable. We first heard of the stories about like the U.S. Embassy in Havana, and that's where it's being used on a small level. Mm-hmm. I've had whistleblowers have come to me saying, people don't understand the massive scale of Havana syndrome, and they're getting it all wrong. Is this where do you think people are getting Havana syndrome wrong? Maybe the characterization of it.
The characterization.
Like, I think the picture is that it's somebody in a van sitting outside shooting some sort of a thing at a building, and it's this small, and that's it, and we're just trying to make you a little nuts.
Fair enough. I think a lot of people think of it as it needs to be something like line of sight.
Yeah.
Or like Elon Musk, I think I feel like the whole Neuralink is just a cover story to make us believe that the connection can't occur unless you have the hardware.
Right.
But we already know the frequencies. We already know the signals. They can already be listened to, and they can already be transmitted to. We already have this science. We don't need Neuralink.
Where does 5G come into this?
Ooh, that's an interesting one because there's a big debate. I believe absolutely that 5G can be used detrimentally to people.
In the same way that Havana syndrome, the same way it's being targeted?
I do believe that it would have again, the umbrella term, directed energy weapons system. It's manifold capacity. I wish I knew the entirety of the list, but it appears to be one of these things that, similar to the South Pole Station, they roll it out with its conveniences and its primary purpose. But we have to delve into what can it also do.
Like a byproduct that they didn't anticipate. Mm-hmm. So when we look at HARP and these HARP arrays, being able to, you and I have talked previously about being able to manipulate and create hurricanes or direct hurricanes in a certain pathway.
Increase the power. Mm-hmm.
And why certain cities are completely untouched, where there's a HARP array nearby, or, all of that, right? So am I wrong about that? Or
no, it seems to be the case is that, if people pay attention to the energies in weather systems, there's a lot of people that find, these next-rad radar systems also seem to be able to apply their energies to either enhance or redirect storms or stall them. I mean, I don't know if you remember the news for 9/11 event. Do you remember the weather in New York just before 9/11? There was a hurricane inbound to Manhattan, right, and then it stalled off the coast and stayed there so that it was crystal clear for 9/11. And then it actually went back out to sea. It changed direction.
Huh. Well, it's remarkable. I didn't, or what happened in North Carolina, what happened with these recent rounds of storms, and you can see unbelievable weather data about these things going in directions that they would never go.
Yeah, the weather's doing things that it would never have done before. Nobody could have predicted the North Carolina event because according to weathermen, that's not possible.
So that's one application, is the controlling of weather, manipulation of that. What's the good application of these HARP arrays? Like the people that would work for them or work on them, what would they say? Oh no, that's conspiracy theory stuff over there, like manipulating weather. What we're doing with the HARP arrays is this.
Well, according to the HARP arrays, for ionospheric research,
Oh,
Very benign stuff. This is how they, it's ionospheric research. What they leave out of the statement, technically, I mean, everybody's concerned about global warming. How many people are aware that another term for HAARP is an ionospheric heater? It heats the atmosphere.
they're using the HAARP arrays to heat the atmosphere.
That's one of the science aspects, is they actually heat the atmosphere, and it can make a bubble. So picture the ionosphere being a sphere to begin with. But then when you heat a particular area, it makes almost like a spherical tumor. And then off of that, they say that they can bounce signals through that bubble. Okay? So now the research I've done is what they say is that the atmospheric heating to create the bubble takes a bunch of time. But once it's there with tension, so to say, when they release the energy that built it, apparently that ionospheric bubble like snaps back into place and technically exerts energy.
Like some sort of a big,
Just a snapback.
yeah.
You know, that it takes a while for it to come this way, but that the return is rapid and provides an energy release. So these, you have to look at the world differently.
Now, that's the application of HAARP. What was the application of the neutrino detector in the South Pole Station? Far more powerful, using these basketball domes, as you said, in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
What would they say is like the practical application of that?
For
On the press release.
For discovering interactions between neutrinos and the nucleus of the ice molecules that they're embedded in. That when that reaction occurs, the nucleus and the neutrino disintegrate. They make a blue flash of Cherenkov radiation. That's what's observed. And basically then they utilize that to get a trajectory from where the neutrino came from.
Now, I've learned from you that in many ways, this is an air traffic control center for interstellar travel, which may just blow people's minds, right? Well, that's a big jump from just talking about weather, but it's really like an air traffic control center to monitor aircraft out in space.
What we're finding in the technological communities is that these highly advanced aircraft, whatever you want to call them, have exotic propulsion that emit neutrinos. So it stands to logic and reason that, if you and I and all these people, all these factions have all this secret air traffic, you'd need a facility to monitor the traffic. It's just reasonable. So to me, it makes it very simple that if this equipment exists in the air and the atmosphere and is moving on and off Earth, they're going to want to be able to track it. Now, historically, there's a gentleman by the name of Lloyd Berkner, who was part of the original Bird expedition. Very important character. Lloyd Berkner was who Kennedy was going to meet and speak with on a very important day when he was stopped from going to meet and speak with someone.
What?
He was going to meet Lloyd Berkner.
In Dallas.
Correct. Talk to Dark Journalist about this, DJ. He's the only person I know that seems to be covering the Antarctic topic correctly. But with that being said, when Bird went to Antarctica and came back, I'm sorry, not Bird, Berkner. Berkner came back and requested funding from the American government to start a program to observe the activities of things coming in and out of the atmosphere. They responded with giving him the funding that he was looking for, but then through the NSF and such, they started what they called the geophysical year, which is a very interesting term. And then through the geophysical year, all the nations got together and started the Antarctic Treaty. And we got the United States Antarctic Program. And we got what is presented as science and research, but it's the same funding that Berkner requested for observation of the exact same things I'm suggesting are what's really going on.
So he was meant to meet with him, killed, obviously, assassinated. What do you think would have come of that meeting?
I think there was actually going to be a big disclosure event. I think Kennedy wanted to let the cat out of the bag as far as all what we were warned about, beware the dangers of the military-industrial complex. And I think Kennedy was going to do his best effort to break that open publicly. And I think it was the military-industrial complex that took him out. The aerospace companies, former, Operation Paperclip folk.
Why Antarctica?
Remoteness. So it's completely secure from anybody that doesn't have the logistics line to get in and out. Mother Nature secures your borders. Second to that, it suits what they're calling the primary purpose for this stuff. You know, off-world studies of the cosmos and things like that. And then additionally, I actually believe from my research that there's something to be said if you're going to be entering or exiting the atmosphere of, say, the Earth, the Moon, or any of these things in our solar system. It appears for some reason that it's easier to do that at the south pole of said body. So in regards to the air traffic control capacity, I think there's something blatant about that location, with the presumption that if there are things that aren't ours, that aren't from here, that for some reason they will still follow that reason and logic that entering and exiting from the southern pole provides benefit.